right. Well, hello. This is Arthur Bush. You're listening to Radio Free Flint. And today I have Ryan Laurie, who is a former white nationalist who grew up in Flint and who's here to talk to us today about his journey and what it was like to grow up in Flint and how he got engaged in white nationalist activities. And we'll also have Ryan talk to us a bit about what his current work is, and I think you'll find it quite a fascinating interview. So without any further ado, welcome, Ryan.
I appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you very much. Now, Ryan, you grew up in Flint, right?
Yes, I grew up on the east side of Flint, Rollingwood. We used to say it's not the east side; we're our own little neighborhood there, and community. But yeah, Rollingwood, which is Western and Richfield Road area, behind there. So
that's a rough and tumble area.
Very rough.
Tell us about your family a little bit.
So I really honestly lived I try to say like two lives. So my mom's side of the family, she was a single mother, raised 3 children on her own, worked a 3rd shift job. So it was very hard to try to hold down a rough neck teenager from the east side. On my father's side of the family, he lived in the suburbs. So he actually lived in Kersley schools, where I actually went to school at a young age. I didn't have to go to Flint schools. So I would see the suburban life when I was at his house, and then come back to my mom's, and all my friends were, from Flint. And so it was, like I said, two sides to how life could be growing up. One side, I felt like I had more white privilege. On the other side, not so much. We were really, really poor.
Did your family have any engagement or involvement in white nationalist activity?
So, at a young age, no. My mom's side, I never saw anything. My dad's side was, like I said, it wasn't uncommon to hear the N-word at the dinner table. Now, there is some history in my family going back to my great-great-grandfather.
Okay.
So he would have, from what we're told, he was buried in his robes. He was a member of the KKK. We actually used to own a building that was on the corner of Leith and, Leith and Franklin Road. It actually used to have our family name, Laurie, up on it in brick. And it was supposed to be an old bar or a place for prostitutes, from what I hear in the story. It's been torn down now. It's not even there anymore. And that was where some of the KKK members and different people actually used to meet and kind of hang out.
So your grandpa had a robe?
Yeah, my great-great-grandpa, yes.
When you grew up, were you ever involved in any kind of gang activity, or did you see any kind of?
So growing up in Rollingwood, and on the east side, period, I was all over Flint. So during the 90s, and you were a prosecutor at that time, there was gang activity everywhere in the city of Flint, especially in Rollingwood, where I grew up. We had the Cobras and some Vice Lords and Bloods that really had a stronghold in the area that I was from there. And so I saw some drive-by shootings. It wasn't uncommon to see guys committing crimes that were involved with gang activity. Me, myself, personally, I was never actually part of a gang, but definitely had friends and people that were affiliated. And so there was a lot of white kids that, they would say racial things. There were definitely some racist tension there, but never any type of gangs early on in my life that were. So, I was in an abusive life. My father was very abusive, family that was too as well. So I wasn't home as much. My mother's boyfriend also was very abusive himself. So I ran the streets a lot and found myself into some trouble early on in my juvenile life. I did face a trial at a very young age. Yep. So I was accused of rape from Kersley schools. I was a Kersley schools student and had 5 girls that had came out and said on different occasions that something had happened to them. Now, during the trial, a lot came out that probably should have came out in the beginning before there was ever even a trial. Where some of them had admitted lying, and then eventually was found not guilty in the courts. Now, because of that, my life kind of went down from there. I started to hang out with people I probably shouldn't have been hanging out with.
Because of the trial, your life went down. It was because of your behavior.
Yes, my behavior. No, behavior. I faced a trial, and then from there, I didn't go back to trying to be an AB honor roll student. I was stealing things. I was totally creating a monstrous situation for my parents at the time.
Okay.
And so,
Then you started getting into trouble, real trouble.
yeah, yeah. I actually was, like you said, hanging out with some people in gangs, but not doing anything specifically for a gang. But I was stealing things to smoke cannabis. We, doing different stuff to have money to, put shoes on my feet, the kind of shoes that I wanted, not what my mom could necessarily afford. Yeah, so I had actually stole my stepmother's vehicle, actually going to get my teenage girlfriend at the time a pregnancy test. She said she was pregnant. And on my way to actually pick her up to go do all these things, I actually crashed into a parked car at the time, and then I took off from the scene. I was put on probation. Kent McVitie was my probation officer at the time. Served on some probation for a short period of time before I ended up finding myself in some more trouble from stealing some things and doing other stuff where I ran away. I was just out on the street, so I wasn't checking in with probation or my parents.
So it sort of got to be a lifestyle for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there was the adrenaline rush there for some of the stuff that we were doing or what it was, but it was just more of not wanting to be home and wanting to get into trouble, and
So I mean,
eventually.
it wasn't one of these things where just one day you decided, I want to take a bottle of pop out of the cooler at the store and see if I can get out the door. I mean, you woke up in the morning and kind of organized your day around doing shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were always looking to see what kind of trouble we could get into, especially going to Para. Most of the kids there, we all did drugs. So we
Oh, so we got that established that you were heading down the road of being a real criminal.
Yeah.
And then you met Judge Duncan Beagle.
Yeah, and Judge Beagle actually wrote a huge letter to me, and I wrote him a couple of letters too, and decided that Glen Mills Schools was going to be the best program for me to get my life straight and to stop hanging out with the people that I was hanging out with.
Judge Beagle wrote you a letter?
Yeah, he was. I was really heavy into sports, basketball, football, wrestling, different things, and Judge Beagle's always been involved in sports here locally, and so I think he took a keen eye to, who I was, and he was my trial judge as well. So I think he really got to see a lot of my backstory of my life. And
so were you on probation to Judge Beagle?
yes, I was on probation. That's when I was actually violated from stealing some things and from running away, not checking in for probation. And when they violated me, that was when Judge Beagle said, if you continue down this road, you're going to end up either dead or in prison, make a major mistake. Let's try Glen Mills out.
So he sent you to Glen Mills, basically, which Glen Mills is a boys' school.
Yep.
It's a place for troubled kids.
Yes. Very troubled kids.
And it's located a long ways from Flint, right?
Yeah, it's in Concordville, Pennsylvania. So Glen Mills Schools, Pennsylvania. It's just outside of Philadelphia.
All right. So you got your first big adventure outside of Flint, but it was to Glen Mills where the court sent you. And then, of course, you were under the jurisdiction of the probate court at that point.
Yep. Honestly, a lot of self-discipline. I wish there would have been more of a mentorship program after we left, but I can't blame that on anybody but myself for the mistakes I made. But Glen Mills was great. I mean, to be honest with you, I got my education that I needed because I was able to focus on school. I actually earned a lot of leadership there by following the program and doing what they told you to do.
So it had the structure you were lacking at home in Rollingwood.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So then you graduated from Glen Mills. Did you come back to Flint after that?
So I joined the military. I came back to Flint for about 2 months before I shipped off again and was gone.
And you had a lot of structure in the Army, I assume.
Yes, definitely.
Place at a point in time, and you can't be out picking up cars and
No.
And dope.
No.
You got eventually you served in the Army for how long?
For 4 years. Came back home during the housing crash. So it would have been right around 2007, 2008. I was home on some leave actually for a short period of time and found myself actually getting into trouble. So I was still kind of in the military process there, but had never been convicted of a crime or anything, while I was in the military. So I was able to ETS, come home and
You got out of and then came back home, and that probably wasn't your best move, right?
No, I should have stayed in. I still to my, well, life has its ups and downs, but everything happens for a reason, the way I look at it. But definitely, I wish I would have stayed in and
All right.
retired.
So you said that you told me earlier in our conversation that you had an uncle that was involved. You said earlier your great grandfather had been involved in the Ku Klux Klan, but you had a more immediate relative when you got out of the army.
So my uncle actually had just got out of prison, and I had a huge falling out with two of my friends, two black men that to this day are still great friends of mine. But at the time, we had a big falling out because something was stolen from my house, food actually. Understand my uncle also at a very young age molested my cousin and I. He had always been kind of a bad influence in my life, and obviously my predator too at a very young age. Growing up, he was only 8 years older than me, so he would get into trouble hanging out with some of the same older guys that I was hanging out with.
Was he
And
into this any of this hate stuff? Any of this?
yes, he was. So when he came out of prison, he had joined the Aryan Brotherhood while he was in prison, and because of that, he met quite a few guys.
Uh,
It's a white nationalist group. Most what we find in America, they're really established themselves in prison. So a lot of the radicalization that they do is in prison itself. And they're a white group that believes in not doing drugs, no alcohol, and protecting the.
do you start getting into it because of him, or what was it he was teaching you?
He took me and actually, so I had gotten to the fight with my friends I had told you about, and I was very angry. And I was angry at the world at the time because I couldn't find a job, and I probably should have been more angry at myself and getting my life together, but I was taking it out on everybody else. I actually was introduced to a man named Ron Chadwell, that my uncle had actually knew previous to actually going to prison. And then a couple of the guys that he was in prison with that were hanging out with Ron at the time, with the Buick City Boot Boys, who was a skinhead organization in the city of Flint at that time before I had actually even started hanging out with them. He took me to introduce me to Ron. Ron was a very charismatic type of, I call him a cult leader. He wasn't your typical what I would expect to see when you see this guy. I was, my uncle Timmy is taking me to introduce me to these guys that are skinheads, and I'm thinking I'm going to see this shaved head, big, huge, bulky guy with tattoos. But it was actually a complete opposite. He's a very small little guy, missing a finger, and just talked real low. But all he ever talked about was hate rhetoric, and so he pushed it down everybody's throats as much as possible. And yes, he was from Flint. He was actually murdered in Flint a few years back. I'm pretty sure the murder to this day is still went unsolved. I don't know if it was his past caught up with him or what happened, but he was murdered in his home. Yeah.
And so this Buick City Boot Boys, that's a local group of some kind, you know?
Yeah, they were a skinhead group. They were on the east side off of Oklahoma. They had a swastika burnt into their front yard. They had several different flags hanging up in the backyard. One of the cases that really put them, I guess, what they considered on the map was where a Jewish man was actually stabbed to death and then drowned in the Flint River by two of the members. I guess they said that he was a Jewish infiltrator. He tried to infiltrate the group. They found out. And so when that happened,
Were the people who did the murder caught?
yes, they both are serving life sentences. They were brothers, actually. Both are brothers.
So were they part of this Buick City group?
Yeah, it was part of the Buick City Boot Boys. Ron Chadwell was the president at the time. Ron was always good about keeping his nose clean so that nothing ever could get pointed back to him.
When it comes to this group that you start to affiliate with, did they hold regular meetings?
Yeah, in the beginning it was really unorganized. It was more of Ron had a keg over at the house all the time, and there was parties, young people that he would try to bring around. And it wasn't until I actually came in and started to try to organize it more like the military would. And we sat down and had some conversations with some people through the National Socialist Movement, who's like the largest Nazi organization, they say, in the United States.
So
Um,
you because you had been in the military
mhm.
and you had learned certain things about discipline and order and organization, you then were able to apply that. How old was this Ron?
Ron Chadwell, oh, gosh, he died in his 40s. So Yeah, he would have been in his late 30s, early 40s. Yeah.
Were they talking? Did they have arms? Did they have, were they collecting guns or
Yeah,
weapons?
actually, one of the first times that I was introduced to these guys, I came to the gate,
Right.
and there was a guy actually with a pistol, a firearm on him at the time, and they were doing tattoos in the garage. I seen the pistol on his arm or on his side, and I almost got the fight or flight. Like, I don't know if I should be here, but I went ahead and went with it anyways. They did have multiple different firearms. Most of them was stuff that each person owned individually, but Ron did have a decent sized stockpile at his house. So
And did they ever do training with these weapons?
we didn't do as much as we probably should have. That was something that was definitely spoke about, stuff that we should start getting into, especially with my training with the an M16A2 and some of the M4s. Ron had, I believe, his brother actually had an AR-15 at the time, and I think there was an SKS that was brought out, on different occasions. And
These are all
um,
these are all assault rifles you're talking about.
right,
Now,
and
yes, the answer to that question was yes. You did do things with the guns too.
yeah, we showed in different ways of dismantling, putting back together, how you could shoot, how you should hold your weapon when you're doing mount training, things like that. We also did a lot of hand-to-hand combat too. So
And did you practice with these guns out in the woods someplace or?
no, we had there was a couple times on occasion where we had people that we knew that threw parties for us, that we actually had a couple of stolen four-wheelers at the time that we had took out to the middle of the woods and kind of had a bunch of tents set up, and so we went out and kind of did target practice
All right.
in the woods at the
Wasn't
time.
any plan to go, take over City Hall or something like that?
No, not at all.
So,
Everything we did was mostly about trying to just mainstream hate at the time, and connecting with groups around the world, and trying to, like, I guess, more globalize what we were doing, instead of just being some small group from the east side of Flint.
so you were trying to connect your group to outside organizations that peddled hate.
Yeah, and we eventually did. I mean, it was something that Ron's focus. He had plans for the future of what he wanted this group to become. He said the old times of the skinheads, shaving your heads and just being destructive, doesn't bring in money. It doesn't bring in the connections that he needed. So we actually connected with the National Socialist Movement. At the time, they were actually housed, their main center headquarters was actually out of Minnesota, and now it's in Detroit. But
When you say you connected to them, did you go to their meetings or did they come to your
they
meetings?
they came to us. We met with them one time. Crazy as it is, we took them to the Red Baron in Burton, the bar there, and had a large meeting with them there. We used the bar more as the name, to bring these guys in from outside and kind of take them to this bar. Not that the Red Baron has anything to do with skinheads. It was just the location that we chose. We had a meeting there where we talked about several rallies and ideas that we could do for this area, how to kind of branch out.
Did you ever plot violence as part of this group?
No, so was there violence? Yes, there was violence. These guys would go out sometimes in their vehicles and have their flags flying on the side and throw rocks and 2 liters and whatever they could out the windows. Myself, because I held a leadership position, my whole job and what I was put forth to do was to mostly mainstream us. A lot of the internet, what I knew how to do with the internet at the time,
So your
was to
your job was to be the social media director of the whatever they were called, the Rolling.
yeah.
What were they
Basically,
called?
we try to set up Rollingwood Skins is what we eventually rebranded everything
Okay.
as.
All right. And so you were trying to, and the reason you're on social media is not only to communicate with others within the group,
Right.
but social media by definition is to interact with others outside your group.
Yeah, it was to obviously share the rhetoric and spew hate anywhere we could, but to also try to pick up membership, in a larger scale.
All right, so these guys are off on frolics where they're doing destructing property and so forth. Were they doing any burnings of crosses or?
Not the group that I was part of. It's not to say that there wasn't something like that maybe going on with other groups, but we never actually took place in any type of cross burnings. That's more of like a KKK model for.
So your group, what you're trying to tell me, and I'm not trying to be a comic or anything, but your group was more akin to be an evangelist for hate than it was to be, street fighters for hate.
Right, exactly. The old ways of a lot of skinheads was street fighters, go out and just destroy stuff and
Or
you know,
kill people.
kill people, violence. Yes, exactly. And the worst of the worst. But Ron's plan when I came in was to create more order and kind of spread the message of trying to bring in leadership and membership.
Were you ever afraid that the FBI or local police would infiltrate your group?
Yeah, that was talked about all the time. We had security briefings on the weekends, like I did in the military. I told them that I thought that we should have security briefings where we spoke about who was membership. We did do a lot of vetting of members that came in, and a lot of times before you could actually become a member, Ron or some of the other guys really got to know who your family members were, what you were doing, who you were hanging out with. But there was several. You're constantly looking over your back because you know, when you're full of hate and you're doing these kind of things, you don't trust anybody. You know, you don't even trust yourself. Have something to where the media or somebody else could use something against us when it comes to like violence, murder, something like that. The image that we were trying to create in order to go mainstream or take it further, we couldn't have that kind of name. Ron didn't want that, so we went over that just like the military would. You know, don't go out drinking and driving. Don't do anything to get yourself caught and in trouble for something else. But we would also talk about how we needed to be very aware that yes, there was law enforcement agencies that we believed was already watching us, which they were. So we had the Flint Police and Genesee County Sheriff's Department. I know for a fact, and I know since then with the work that I do now, that the FBI was starting to, and SPLC had some members that were trying to kind of keep a keen eye on what we were.
So you went to this group. You were doing these briefings, which you
Mhm.
called security briefings, and then did the FBI or anybody actually infiltrate your group?
Not that I ever know that we were ever infiltrated. One of the members, James Travardis, at the time,
Your security briefings, what would they consist of?
more of just going over why we shouldn't do certain things when we're not together. Don't do anything that's going to make the organization look. But he actually had, there were some crimes that we were committing to make money on the side, stealing some boat motors. As petty as it sounds, we were bringing in a decent amount of money for him. James was actually caught. He got greedy and stole something that had a tracking system on it. And Genesee County Sheriff's Department was actually able to get him to turn. And then that was when he started to kind of work for the police and reporting back, you know, what kind of activity we had going on at the time. And eventually brought, you know, how my arrest came about was because of him.
All right. So the group started to engage in what I would call entrepreneurial activities. That is, they're trying to make money
Yes.
for yourself or for the group.
So what we did was mostly we had some of the cut. Obviously, was the guys that were committing it would get to take some of the cut back to their home, and some of it all went back into the group. A lot of us worked part-time jobs on the side. Some of us did, so that money was for your own home, you know, for you to take home. But we did have membership dues, and so anybody that could, you know, bring in something.
How much did it cost to belong to this thing?
Yeah, I remember it was really, really cheap in the beginning. It was like $10 a month. That got you beer. There was a keg that Ron constantly kept refilled all the time, and that was mostly to bring in the young guys. I didn't necessarily believe in the drinking and the drugs as much, although it did bring girls around, females that were constantly hanging out with us, and so it was just a party life, honestly, until that was mostly just to kind of get you in, you know, give you a taste of something maybe fun, and then you were introduced to other things that we were doing.
And how much did it cost after that?
I think we eventually, if I can remember, I think it ended up going right around like $20 or $30. I mean, we were in the city of Flint. You know, if we had tried to, you know, make a membership 50 to $100 or do something crazy like that, which even that's not a lot, but to do something like that in the city of Flint, you're never going to get people to join. And so we mostly just made it about doing something for the group rather than, you know, necessarily bringing in money. A lot of these guys were poor, you know, East Side um,
What did
guys.
you do with the money once you collected it?
A lot of times it went to Ron. So Ron wasn't the actual labeled as the president. He labeled himself as a secretary of the organization and the treasurer. And so a lot of the money stayed right at his house in the safe that he had there. To be honest with you, I think Ron was going out and spending some of this. You know, we never really sat down and said, "Hey, let's go over a count on the money." Most everybody just kind of trusted him.
Uh,
But Ron always had a nicer car than everybody else. So So with the hate group, we never actually took it to Back to the Bricks. That was the Crim Festival that we took that to. That was when I was with the hate group.
I
The
got you.
Back to the Bricks is in my later years when I actually organized against hate. So it was a completely different side of my life then.
Okay, well, then let's talk about what you did first when you were for it before you were against it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
we went to the Crim Festival of races, not Back to Bricks. And when we went to the Crim, we did that because, like I said, we wanted to go more mainstream. Most of the groups like National Socialist Movement, people that you saw getting media attention and any type of media attention, whether it's negative or positive, was attention focused on the group.
so you were actually trying to get attention at that point, but
Yes.
most of the time you spent trying not to get attention, right?
Right. By this time, we had a decent amount of members. We had about 50 different guys that were in and out most of the time. We felt like that was a good enough number now. And we had already connected with National Socialist Movement and felt like in another group, the Hammer Skins out of Canada, that we felt like we had a substantial system set up for us to start kind of going to the media.
We have this road race running activity that's one of the largest events of its kind in the country.
Yeah.
It's people from all over the world. And so you decide you're going to do some kind of an action for this road race.
Yep. So we brought about 15 different guys down to the event and we were passing out flyers. Now eventually,
What did the flyers say?
there was a lot of rhetoric about why you should protect the white race. We had the 14 words of the white man that was on there, which are words that were created to, about protecting, white culture. We had the words or the numbers 1488 on there, which the 14 stands for the 14 words of the white man. 88 was the eighth letter of the alphabet twice, HH for Hail Hitler. And then just some stuff on there, how they could join, how to find our MySpace page actually at the time, and 4chan to kind of hook up with us on a Discord server.
So what did you do at the event itself? You were just passing things out?
Yeah, we were passing flyers out. Every time we went up to somebody, said, basically protect your white race, white culture is under attack. Basically launching off some Zionist conspiracy theories that the Jewish people were going to take over the United States if we didn't do something about it. At that time, immigration was still a huge hot topic, or it just started to become a real hot topic. And so we used that too, that, immigrants were taking our jobs away from us and that you needed to do something now to act now. We did have the police actually stop us. Eventually they had to let us go back out again. And they called the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutors actually told them that they had to let us go and do what we were doing. If we weren't committing violence and all we were doing was passing out flyers, that they couldn't do anything. And I knew a lot about my constitutional rights at the time, so we definitely started spitting out a bunch of constitutional
At some point
we had signs and different stuff made up that day at the rally that had just different white power rhetoric on them.
Okay, and that got you attention, I take it.
Yeah, the police by that time now were obviously paying attention to us, and then the media also had caught wind of what was going on. And then we met with several different organizations, one being the main focus who organized the National Socialist Movement up in Cadillac, Michigan at one of their parks there.
Did you participate in their rallies nationally in the other cities?
Detroit, on a couple of occasions. They've had some rallies there. I never traveled to, Minnesota. I couldn't afford to leave.
Would your group go to Detroit to participate?
Yes, we went on.
So what I'm asking is the kids from Flint would go down there, men,
Yep.
down and participate with other people from around other cities.
Yes. Detroit had a really, really big stronghold for skinhead groups. There's about 3 different groups that were there at the time, and still to this day, National Socialist Movement, their headquarters, they actually moved to Detroit. And so they would hold, a lot of times it'd be small marches down a couple of different streets, but it always caught huge media attention anytime the National Socialist Movement did something.
So eventually you get in trouble.
Yes.
Again.
Yes, as an adult.
The trouble more than just getting caught passing out flyers.
Yep. So James Travardis, who I had spoke about earlier, had already been working with the police, and they had enough evidence to bring us down for the boat motors and for these 2 4-wheelers that we had kept on us that were stolen as well from the pier. They set up a sting to have guys come in that they told us were just wanting to buy the 4-wheelers off of us. James set it up, and they actually were undercover sheriff's officers. at the time. And so my house was raided and I was arrested.
Were they interested in the raid in your activities with the skin
Yeah, so that was
group?
so when I was brought in, obviously, the crimes that I had committed was the first line of questioning that I received, just to see what I would say if I would, basically admit to what I did. And I did. They had all the evidence they needed in the world to convict. So I, admitted to what I did. Most defense attorneys would have told me just to keep my mouth shut, but I didn't. I spoke. I was sick of living the type of life that I was living. And that a lot of times that's the times when we find people most vulnerable to actually try to de-radicalize. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know anything about de-radicalization, or what it even meant.
If I would have met you, Ryan, in that time, you didn't cut your hair off or do other stuff like that, right?
In the beginning, I did shave my head. A lot of that just came out of the military, just having a shorter haircut, But eventually, towards the later years, I started to kind of grow my hair back out.
You said you went to this one place on the east side when they were having a meeting or whatever, and they were in the garage giving tattoos to each other.
Yeah, so what's weird is they used to have the Cobras actually from the east side. A bunch of those guys would actually come in and do the tattoo work for a bunch of skinheads.
Was the idea of the tattoo to make something that related back to your group, or was it just,
We eventually did. We came up with a tattoo that was had a swastika that had points on the swastikas. Actually, the Flint Journal, when they did the story on me, took a picture of the tattoo, and that was what was on the front page of the journal at the time.
People that were in your group at that time would get a distinctive tattoo that was an insignia for your group.
Yep. If you had points on the swastika, there was points on either end. That means you had some form of leadership. If you didn't, it was just the swastika.
So eventually you end up in court in front of a judge.
Yes.
You were punished.
Yep. I served some time in county jail and I was put on probation for 5 years, which is after my incarceration. So my incarceration really allowed me to split myself off from the group because I did admit to the crimes that I committed. Ron and those guys kind of gave cold shoulders to a lot of different people, and everything kind of got really awkward for everybody at that time because nobody knew if somebody was, snitching on them or if something was going to come down onto them for something they did.
So did the group break up at that point?
Some of them all still stayed together, but I was not with that group anymore. My uncle and some of the other guys still continued on until they were. My uncle actually eventually got in trouble for the same crime as mine. He was a co-defendant and he ended up going to prison for his crimes because he was a habitual offender.
Does the group exist today?
No. Ron Chadwell, who I talked about earlier, was murdered.
You found religion, so to speak, somewhere along the path.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us just a little bit about that. We're running short of time here, but just.
Yeah. No, I started to look at things more of like an omnimist, where I tried to find the good in a lot of different things. Ideas I had, one of the things I had really started to research and look into was why did I ever get in trouble in the first place? As a juvenile, all the way in growing up. And one of the things that we lacked in the city of Flint was a lot of mentorship. We just didn't have mentorship programs. So one of my main focuses on pulling myself out of trouble, and I was still on probation at the end of this. And one of the reasons the judge was so happy with me and my probation officer was that they'd never had a guy on probation do something like this before. And so I created a program, a mixed martial arts program, to actually help pull kids that were trying to join inner city gangs, trying to help them to de-radicalize, show them there is hope, and that their life isn't over when they get into trouble.
What was it about your experience that caused you to want to change directions?
Honestly, it was the realization. I started seeing a psychologist and a psychiatrist and started to focus on trauma and the trauma that I had seen in my life or had been part of. It was when I was actually started to kind of take care of that subconscious trauma that I had been dealing with my whole life, that I realized a lot of what had happened to me in my life led me to where I had been. And so if I had been through this and plenty of other kids in the city of Flint that joined gangs, then I knew that it was an issue, it was a problem in the city of Flint. And so that's what I started to try to focus on and made that realization that.
What I'm getting at is to focus on yourself. From there, you began to work on gang prevention activities, basically.
Yep, I started work on my own, actually, trying to see what I could do to pull members out of hate groups and gangs, inner city gangs. By having the mixed martial arts gym, I had started to meet a lot of different people in the community that kind of did something similar, But my focus wanted to be on if I could change in my life, then I could help other people to change and see, the light out of the dark tunnel. And so that's kind of what I started to do. I pulled about 15 different members out of hate groups before I started to work with the organizations that I work for now.
You have moved on to begin to work with a national organization.
It's labeled off as Black people are not our friends, but it's made for clickbait. So what we'll do is we flood hate sites with all these different videos in hopes that somebody, even if it's 1 out of 1,000 members, decides to click on that video and it tells them why they shouldn't be part of a hate group or how I was able to change my life. On top of doing that, we do intervention work. So we have a 24/7 hotline through an organization called Parallel Networks that these people can call if it's a family member that's worried about a person that's involved in some type of hate crime or hate in their community. They can call, and we'll actually go in. We work with Department of Homeland Security, FBI, CIA.
What's the name of this organization?
If it's ICSVE, so it's the International Center for Research on Violent Extremism. It's based out of Washington, D.C.
All right, and you're a program specialist?
Yes.
All right, so one of my questions is, having left this group and having grown up in the city where, your pals, many of them were part of this extreme group, have you had any concerns for your personal safety?
I've had a lot of threats, some that I didn't necessarily take completely serious. Some I've had to report to the police and to the FBI. That seemed pretty credible, people that were actually part of some pretty large organizations.
But how many groups in the Flint area that are what I would call white nationalist or hate groups?
So we always know that there's a KKK somewhat organized here. I don't know how organized, and we don't know a lot. They're really secretive when it comes to a lot of the stuff they do. But the main organization that we've been paying a lot of attention to recently, and we've noticed a lot of graffiti and things popping up, is the Folk Nation, I believe is how they say it. It's a new group, at least for our area. It's a newer group. SPLC is how I found out who this group's symbols were, because we were seeing the symbols in Flint of type of a trident pitchfork, almost in a way like you would think like Folks Up or some old gang. But then there was the numbers 1488 next to it, and everybody knows that's hate rhetoric. Things have changed a lot from the time when I was part of a hate group to where they are now, and the way social media works and the way that interaction works between these groups. And it's obviously a lot easier for them to interact now than it used to be. And then with this past administration, really birthed life too.
You took a frolic into politics for a few minutes.
Yeah, so there's actually a big story behind that too, and then we could get into further, but it was never really an intention that I would ever get elected. We knew with my past it was going to get brought up. Yeah, we thought maybe we could make some change in policy. That was kind of my idea, and a friend of mine, that maybe we could get in and help on building some better policy towards race relations and police activity and things, and how people were being treated. This is before George Floyd.
So, you weren't successful at politics, but you went and put your toe in the water to see how that
right. Try it out and see how it works. Yep.
All right. So you said, and now we can come back to this point that we raised earlier, and that was you said you'd organized over 100 rallies.
Yeah, there was a lot of different things that had, maybe happened, or events that we thought maybe somebody should hold an event to bring light to things. The Rise Against Racism rally that we had at the Back to the Bricks, which was all over the news. We hosted that event because there was a Burton family that was actually attacked, a Black family. Their house was there. They worked for General Motors, UAW members. And there was a lot of attention being brought to what was going on there, but people didn't feel like there was a big enough police investigation into trying to figure out who the
it was a racially motivated attack on the Black family.
Yes, they threw a Molotov cocktail bomb at their garage, and just doing different things at night to really just cause chaos.
So you did rallies in Flint and other places?
Yeah, I did rallies in Flint. I went down and helped do counter rallies in Charlottesville. I also went out to Standing Rock during the water crisis. So I was in a lot of water crisis. So with what was going on in Flint and being involved in the politics there, decided to start kind of getting involved in some of my research was taking me towards how environmental impacts have a link to extremism in itself. And so
so a lot of these people get involved in this activity, and then when the lights are on or the microphone's going, they all are for peace and love.
Mhm.
How do you
Even
respond to that now? I mean, is that something somebody has a right to be suspicious about you and your past?
Oh, you always have a right to be suspicious about anybody, and I always tell everybody, do your research before you make a decision to judge. You see that with a lot of organizations today that say that they're not a racist organization or they have no attachments to white nationalism, but they actually do when you follow the money. Um, Proud Boys, for instance, one of the reasons why I say not necessarily white nationalism, but they're definitely an accelerationist group. They want the all-out destruction and fall. They're really anti-government rhetoric. But the KKK, I mean, come on, you can sit there and they can declare that they're not about violence, but that's all they've ever perpetrated in this country since the 20s and on. Our violence and fear is what they use to promote their membership and try to take power, in several different areas. Also, the Oath Keepers, who is a new organization that they've been around for some time, and 3%ers, but we're finding that they actually have a lot of different police involvement, a lot of members that are actually police officers that are members of the Oath Keepers.
Well, Ryan Laurie, you're an interesting guy. I've enjoyed talking with you, and your story is really quite remarkable.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been great. And like I said, if you have any questions in the future, just give me a chat.
You finished yours, no you can't have